welcome back to Overdunk, everybody, your favorite competitive Pokemon UNITE podcast. My name is Zoinks, and I am joined by Bridget and Snacks, as per usual at this point. And we're joining you for a very special episode for a few reasons. Obviously, we just finished watching the March Cup, a super exciting tournament. The introduction of two bands really did throw things for a crazy loop, a whole lot of fun. We unfortunately don't have a Ditto merch dropped segment, as far as I know, which is devastating to me and me alone. And we got some exciting stuff to talk about. AO's Cup is literally around the corner. EUIC is in a few short weeks, so we'll have to talk about that as well. But of course, a very special announcement is that if you're watching live on Twitch, the stream has been sponsored by Factor 75. Obviously, if you're listening to this in podcast land, we won't be able to get you a direct chat command. However, we will have a link in the description for you to go check out. We have a promotional deal with them. You can get some boxes at a hugely discounted rate with our code, and then of course you will support us here at Unite Monks and get some incredible meals. It's really awesome. So we'll talk about that throughout the episode probably, but also after we finish recording the episode. And then, of course, if you are watching this live on Twitch, we will be headed into a VOD review of Brazil after the episode, which I'm really excited for. So if you're listening in podcast land or watching on YouTube, I highly recommend checking out the episodes live on Tuesdays because we get to do fun stuff like that. So, but all that to say, that's a lot of housekeeping, way more than we usually do in this podcast, but that's okay. I gotta find out how my two co-hosts are doing. Bridget, we hear you're a little under the weather, but outside of that, how you feeling?
I'm honestly good.
Okay.
It's been a crazy 48 hours, but my fever broke this afternoon, so ever since then I've been on the come up. So
okay. Yes, I love that. You gotta look at your life like a graph of health. I do think that is how you need to. That's how you need to look at it. So if you're on the up, that's really good. How about you, Snacks? How you feeling?
I'm feeling really good. Yesterday was pretty good on the bounce back, right? On Monday from casting this weekend. Today I feel great. Gotten to rewatch a little bit of that cast, take some notes, and see how we can improve for the next one.
Awesome. Yeah, I put out a tweet as well. I was feeling the same way. Definitely saw some stuff I could improve on. But overall, this weekend I think was super exciting. So many fun games. A ton of good Unite. A lot of storylines with March Cup, which is crazy. But I feel like the major storyline, of course, is like what Pokemon were played, all those kind of things. And yes, I do believe that code is correct, Maps in chat. But whatever the command says, I believe. But okay, oh, yeah, totally lost my train of thought. So sorry, podcast listeners. But okay, I think the best place to start this podcast episode discussion is around the March Cup, of course, because it was the most recent tournament that just happened. One of the most exciting things, Wonder Chef and I talked about this a lot on the broadcast when we were on our desk segments, but one of the most exciting things is that we literally had a non-repeat winner for every TPCI region, so every Unite Championship Series region, except for Latin America South. So Latin America South, it was Fusion, who have now won back-to-back, but every other region had a brand new team win, and I think that is so incredibly fun. Very, very cool to see the parity among regions, and obviously a change like this is big to the game, so teams who were able to adapt a little bit quicker, maybe in a stronger position. There's a lot to talk about why teams performed the way they did, but we can kind of take it a case-by-case basis. But let's start with EU, because that was where the broadcast started, so let's talk about it. The grand finals of EU were between For Free and Yala Bingo, bit of a run back of last tournament, however, the results may vary. But I feel like the first thing we have to talk about in EU, because everybody was talking about it, Nouns Esports out at 5th, 6th again this tournament. Snacks, how are we feeling about Nouns? 2 months in a row, having a bit of a lackluster performance. This time from winner's side as well.
Yeah, they are a non-factor unless they make themselves one, right? I think we've given enough gas in the tank without getting results from them in the first 2 months. I know they're not happy with their results. There's no way they are. But at this point, I think we're collectively doing a disservice to some of the other teams by continually harping on them, right? Like, in my mind, I want them to put themselves back in the conversation. I don't want to be the one to keep putting them in the conversation. And I know it's when you have the name power that Nouns has, just from the UCS histories, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's difficult, but I think we need to use this opportunity to highlight some of the other teams. And it, they've that's just kind of where I'm at, right? Like they always need to be in the conversation, but not the focal point of it, in my mind, until they spike an event or they have a crazy run,
Okay.
or something like that. That's just where I'm at. I want Nouns to be good. I think that's a good story for the region. I think they are good. I think they're just having some struggles right now.
Okay, fair enough. Bridget, how about you? Thoughts on Nouns?
Yeah, definitely agree with Dube Snacks. Like, I'm honestly really happy to see like teams like Y'all Bingo and Outer Banks perform so well and kind of
Yeah.
like get their flowers. But yeah, it is, I mean, I would say disappointing see Nouns going out so early. I was only able to really watch the main broadcasts of
Mhm.
EU and NA. I didn't really get to see any of like the top 8 games, only really the top 4.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure what is going on with them necessarily. But yeah, it definitely was surprising when I was kind of checking the bracket and I was like, oh, they're already gone. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
top 5, 6 is still great, but
Sure.
yeah, definitely not what would be expected initially, at least.
All right, so this is the part of the show where I come on and not sing a silly song, but this is the part of the show where I come on and be a Nouns apologist. I think to a degree, like also for some reason I don't have Do Snack's camera on. There we go. Oops. Don't know how long he wasn't there. He's back. We're good. This is the part of the show where I enter it and it'd be like, Nouns lost only in top 8 only to For Free and Yalla Bingo. So they lost to the 2 best teams in the tournament. I don't think that's something we got to consider. The Nouns For Free game was incredibly close. Like unbelievably close. It was a crime it wasn't on broadcast, but it was incredibly close. They lost to Yalla Bingo pretty hard in losers. But all that to say, I'm not saying that like they should be considered above or at parity with For Free and Yellow Big. I think it's closer to parity than some other teams. I do think Nouns should still be considered a top 3 team, in my opinion, despite 6th place both times. Maybe that's giving them a little too much credit, but again, there's just so much history on the players. To me, the problem with Nouns is an ice problem. Like, I don't know, like there's so many of these games that are incredibly close, and then it's just at that final line, and there's just some kind of stumbling block that this team hasn't been able to get over.
Which is banana lands. I agree with you, but it's crazy to think about because out of players I've watched, some of the players I've played with, there is nobody that is just icier than Bruv and Toon in terms of just cool, calm, collected, no matter what's going on, and don't seem to just like almost don't have it in them to just blow a game. You know what I mean? That like eventually you'd think no matter what anyone else is doing, one of those two just not throwing the game would be able to save it because they're both that skilled. I don't know anymore. So it's like I think that's kind of where because like every time there's no person that's gonna fire up an EU region and go like, well, I'm not I'm not gonna consider Nouns for that could win this one. You know what I mean? Like every time people, even myself, is like, I mean, like Nouns could make a run. Like they're in loser, they went down to losers early, but I mean, like Nouns could make a run. Like they've made runs. And I think it's almost more shocking that they're not making runs, right?
Yeah, yes. And I totally agree. I'm glad we're on the same page on this front because I also do think this, what I'm calling an ice problem, might also be the rule of transitive property is such a laughable factor, but sometimes I feel like it works. Is also a factor to Yalla Bingo and For Free, who, on the other hand, are two teams made up of people who I know want to win every game so freaking bad, who are competing in these tournaments and have been, let's face it, had a history of coming second, third, sometimes even lower. And this is the year that they're wanting to change all that. You know, Nouns has a lot of people who have a lot of tournament championships, like a lot of chips under their belt. You know what I mean? Yalla Bingo and For Free. Like, look at there. I know Eternal's kind of the homie with Doomsnacks and I, so we talk about him on a lot of broadcasts and a lot of podcasts. But the tweet that Eternal puts out, like when they win this tournament, with just like a flood of like notifications of people like cheering him on and stuff, like it's so clear to the community and everyone that knows that player that they are working so unbelievably hard to win the game. And same thing with For Free. Like, you have Zervis, who has been a player who is just, I've seen that guy at Worlds so frustrated with their performance, like a couple years in a row now. Like, they're tired of this narrative and they're trying to beat it. And I love that it has created this rivalry between Yalla Bingo and For Free, of like this entanglement of kind of who wants it more. And we see banger grand finals, and it's awesome. Unfortunately, the first tournament, the grand finals, maybe not the best place to shout out, but I don't know. That is personally my read on EU. Bridget, do you think I'm close here? Am I off base? What are your thoughts on it?
No, I think that totally makes sense. You can feel it, like the bracket reset grand finals being between Yalla Bingo and For Free again, and For Free won last time, Yalla Bingo won. Like, it's just, it's honestly so fun. It's so much fun. And like you said, you can just feel how much both of these teams really, really want it. I mean, even I think Outer Banks, I was like really impressed with.
Yeah, they look
They're
great
about everything too. Like, it's just been EU just feels a lot more competitive than it did this time last year, which is honestly cool to see.
Yeah, that narrative I feel like has been shattered, which has been in EU for 2 years, right? It was Nouns year 1, Telly Boba year 2, so very, very exciting. But yeah. Doomsnacks, anything else to say about that specific rivalry between For Free and Yalla Bingo?
Yeah, it's one of those, like, I hope it goes on forever, right? Like, their matches are, you know, very good when you speak to the winners finals match between Yalla Bingo For Free in February, and then the grand finals match between these two teams again in March. I think were just all phenomenal games. I hope they keep kind of leveling up at the same pace so we get these exciting barn burner matches. I've never been happier to see a team bounce back from what could have been like an absolutely mentally crippling showing. That was the grand finals of February. I mean, I've talked about it personally ad nauseum. And I'm glad they bounced back and found themselves some success, right? That's exactly what you need, right? Because I can't imagine where their head would be at if, you know, they lost March Cup grand finals like in February, right? Like, you know, it just felt like, oh, this wasn't even really close again. Like, where do you go from there? But man, did they come to game. And they were throwing as much SHIT at the wall as they could just to make something happen. And they figured it out on the fly, which is great to see as well.
It was awesome. And Bridget, you brought this up. I do think we need to talk about Outer Banks before we move on to like meta and everything around EU, because obviously a team just formed, I think at most a week before qualifiers, and that's being generous. Probably a couple days. Of course, we had Tans on the team, Klaus on the team. I know we've seen a couple of like LFT posts from these players already. This clearly was a team formed to be like, hey, we want to play, we want to get some championship points. We're maybe not thinking about this long term. We just want to compete. They did very, very well. Top threes, got a lot of championship points. That's fantastic. They're very sought after players now. So if they sit together or not, it is really cool though to see a team like that form up. I mean, obviously it's got to feel very good for Klaus, a player who has just kind of been, you know, thrown to a bunch of different teams, just have a ton of success there. It's got to be exciting for them. In particular, obviously seeing Tans come back to the game is so exciting. And seeing them like, and their tweet I think was the most exciting. Like they were saying like, I really want to compete. Like I want this. And And that's awesome. Like, I love that we are seeing that energy from players who haven't been competing in a while. Obviously, they're in the scene and they're streaming and stuff, but seeing that competition come back is so sick. So yeah, that's my feelings on Outer Banks. Dupes next. Any thoughts on that team before we transition to EU? Or
no, exactly. That was a great shout by Bridget. They were a fun team to watch. Kid Tan's kind of a solo queue demon from year one, and had trouble finding a home in EU at that point in time on the team. I'm glad they're back. I mean, they said it themselves, like, can't wait to improve, but also like improve on, a 3.5 minute level 15 in Talion against against Yala Bingo. Like, they were like, Tans was grooving out there, and they weren't missing much. Krinsky had a really, really solid set of games as well.
Such good games. Yeah, it was really good.
So it's great. It's just awesome. Like, having this much competition in EU, like you said, breaking that narrative of 2 years, Zoinks, and Bridget pointing out that we have these teams is terrific. It's an exciting region. It was one going into this weekend I was more excited to watch than necessarily NA. And everybody knows I'm a really big homer, but it was hard to deny like the high octane teams that were in there, and it just seemed like they all had a little bit of edge to them a little bit going into this weekend. So that was really cool.
That's awesome. Bridget, obviously, you're a pretty big Outer Banks fan. Any thoughts about this roster before we start talking about Pokemon being used?
I liked the super team kind of all coming together from all different kind of places, and seeing them do well was just really fun. So
yeah, they were sick.
Yeah,
definitely players that we'll have to keep our eye on. Whether they form up again, I mean, top 3 is definitely an incentive to keep teaming. I don't know if they'll do so, but it would be pretty cool. But I wanted to talk about the actual Pokemon being selected, because this was a pretty wild weekend for metagame. And I say that because, yes, obviously 2 bands were introduced into competitive Unite Championship Series. We had the qualifiers, which gave us quite a bit of data, but then there was like a balance patch that adjusted some stuff, maybe not as much. My favorite part, though, about all of this is that the regions were so drastically different from region to region to region about how they approach the game. That could not be more exciting or a better stage setter than we're about to head into an international competition in like 2 weeks. That is so sick. I cannot wait to see the clash. And then, of course, this Asian team's going to be there too, so he even knows. So let's talk about the... This is the top 15 Pokemon used in the EU March Cup. Eldegoss at the top with a 89.3% pick rate. You love this one. I think the second slot, though, is by far the most interesting about EU. Espeon at 24 picks, 85% pick rate, 58% win rate. Espeon was everywhere.
Espeon was everywhere. It looked great. Its Unite move was really just a showcase, right? Stored power, was it Psyshock, Psybeam?
Psybeam, probably.
Psybeam was a great, like, tracking damage for some of these speedsters, right? But also had some secure power in there. It was just a great read on the weekend. It gives you that early power spike. It was a great call. The other massive standout for me is Lil Dodrio down there. 10 times, won 10 times. Like, that is crazy. And also, like, just from region to region, and we'll talk about NA, I'm sure, but like Umbreon having a 77% win rate in EU, and then literally a non-factor, not banned, just not selected in NA was crazy to me, because some of these teams were getting throttled by speedsters in a way that, like, I can't even describe. So, like, this is a 77% win rate on Umbreon with Dodrio hitting 100% win rate. Like, it is crazy out here. What a weekend.
Yeah, it is wild to see that too. There's also one notable difference between EU and every other region outside of OC, I suppose, every LATAM and North American region, that that chat was reminding us before, 0 Mimikyu on this chart.
Yep.
Spoiler alert for
yeah.
every other region, Mimikyu is everywhere. Like, crazy high ban rate, crazy high pick rate. Like, this Pokemon has taken over in a way that I haven't quite been able to figure out why. The other big one, and this is one that I was very interested in about, and we knew this going into EU because we watched the qualifier stream last weekend, or at least I was. I know everybody was watching it, but Blaziken versus Gyarados between EU and NA was an interesting conversation. Blaziken was way more popular in EU than it was in NA. Blaziken had a 64% pick rate, only a 33% win rate. Blaziken really struggling compared to like where I think a lot of people's like mental had it ranked. You know what I mean? Like where it was like, oh, Blaziken's pretty darn good. It's got good secure. It's got good team fight. Problem with like it's got a good level 5, which is important in this metagame as well. The problem is getting it its level 5 and not dying to an early gank is very, very hard in this metagame when a Pokemon like Espeon just kind of waltzes up with a full stack of stored power and rips you down. So, I don't know. It feels weird. Like, it's not like pro players haven't figured out this Pokemon. Like, have you seen Megu on Blaziken? He's got a very good understanding of this Pokemon. It's just falling a little bit short. And yeah. And then the other one I thought was Mew at 75% win rate. Thank you, Lunder.
Yeah, literally on Lunder's back.
Thank you, Lunder. And maybe hands in some case. I'm not too sure. But Bridget, how about you? Any thoughts when looking at the EU pick chart?
I think all of the takes you had were really spot on. So I say I only watched top 4. Really, I only listened because I was in the car and I just had you guys casting in my car stereo.
Wow. I feel so
know.
bad for you.
Whatever.
Bridget, if you're looking for a new car, well, a new used car.
Oh my word, I forgot.
You know a guy.
He is the guy.
But yeah, I think the Espeon of it all was just really interesting to me because we did have that balance patch like what 3-4 days before, and so I think teams kind of like adapting and leading into Espeon was so smart and obviously worked. And it was cool to see, but yeah.
Worked really well for EU, for sure. 24.
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of these, like, Sixties was basically permanently on this Pokemon, and Yellow Bigo did a lot of winning, so that is going to help their inflation. But they were through winner's side, so it's not like they had as many games as some of these players in losers bracket, which is important to think about, too. Glaceon was only picked 8 times, but a 75% win rate. I think rumors of Glaceon's death have been greatly exaggerated. Personally, I think that Pokemon is still crazy good. I still hate it with every fiber of my being. It is exceptionally strong. So, yeah, I think other than that, I feel like we hit most Pokemon that we were planning on. I feel like Espeon and Eldegoss being so exceptionally higher than every other Pokemon is interesting. We saw a decent amount of Clefable bans in EU, but I think a lot of the time EU was not banning supports as often. They were very comfortable with basically whatever you could get. Obviously, Buzzwole and Leafeon basically getting the perma-ban treatment. That's why they're not on this list. I think those are the 2 big bad of the meta these days. But yeah
unless you talk to NA.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah. NA letting that through all day.
What's going on?
I don't know. Yeah, we'll definitely have to, I guess at this point, is there any final thoughts on EU before we move on? This is my score.
Final thoughts on EU. Yeah, Eldegoss was incredibly high. You mentioned obviously because it was played a lot by Yellow Bingo and for free, which coincidentally just happened to have like 2 of the best Eldegoss players, not only in their region, but like you could argue would make some top 10 lists around the world just on that Pokemon specifically. Zervis definitely internal trying to make their case for that right through these first 2 months. So I think those, like you said, those numbers are a little inflated. I'm a little surprised that Hoopa was. I mean, actually, I did fine. Like, I had a 60% win rate or whatever. But you know, I'm surprised it got banned at all, because it did get banned a couple times in
It
EU,
did, actually, yeah. That was a pretty hard target ban. I wonder if that was more player-specific. You know what I
think
mean?
so.
Like, there's like a few
Yeah, I think
supports in
that's right.
EU that I'm like, yeah, they really like Hoopa. It might be worth taking it.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yep, that was the only other point I wanted to make.
Okay. Dang, some of these stats are really interesting. I like digging into the deeper end of poker stats when he brings them out. Like, Lunder had, I think it was like a 6.8 or something KOs per game. Which is pretty impressive. That just usually means they're winning most of their games in that case. But damage per game average is 84,000 damage. When you're playing that much Mew, that is pretty sick. Very impressive stuff from Lunder this weekend. It was awesome to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, shall we transition to North America? We should talk about the NA tournament.
Yeah, I think so.
Feels right, right? All right. So let's talk about North America. Obviously there was definitely some controversy and stuff going on. It was a little wild. With NA, as it always is, but there was still some cool stuff that really happened from NA that got me very, very excited. We had one of the best grand final series, I think the best grand final series we've had so far this season.
Yeah.
Unbelievably good.
insane.
Nail-biting, like, it literally had everything you want in a Unite match. It had a game-saving, like, counter-score opportunities. You got some flips. You got some crazy team fights. Like, it literally had everything you'd want, I feel like. It was, you had Cramorant winning a tournament. Like, what else did you ask for at this point in time, honestly, right? Like, it's crazy.
It was like the first finals in a long time where I've been like, I am so excited for either of these teams to win. Because
Yes.
like just everybody on that team, on both teams, seems I guess I'll caveat myself, seems like such excellent people. I don't know them personally, I just know their personality for the game. Like, to see I've never seen the fear that GT had of letting LGC get anything. Like, they would sometimes use both of their bans just to take shit away from LGC, and it was like I'm not saying like they're scared, but it was like objectively the right thing to do, right? Like, make him go down into the well and fight from there, and then like the crazy let's limit what Espo can play by trying to gut all of these support characters out. And then like this premium on Blissey, because the Bliss Assistant LGC was just the like nastiest thing moving, despite Blissey like being objectively through the 10 minutes worse than Hoopa would be in a lot of the situations with their compositions. But it just, that Unite move mattered so much. Like, it was a sick grand finals. It was so good.
Oh, it's gonna be hard to top that one. Like, folks, if we have some kind of awards or something for the podcast, we absolutely should do some kind of like awards show at the end of the season. Best grand finals, I think March Cup is making a case in North America for one of the most exciting spot. Yeah. Scyther Blissey was, but there were so many cool picks. I see chat talking about Stockings Meowscarada was absolutely off the chain. Like, so many sick picks. I can't believe GT didn't play more double beam, but then again, I can. And when there's just so many speedsters that can rip apart your backline at any moment, anytime. So let's talk about a few teams. Last time we talked about Nouns first for EU, so let's talk about the champions. Alter Ego headed to this tournament. Alter Ego lose 2-0 to Team Nemesis, and then they go on to beat Exile 2-1, and then fall to GT 2-1. We got to cast the Alter Ego GT match, so at least we got to watch that one. A few close calls for Alter Ego, but definitely not the same, like, unstoppable performance we saw from them in February, right? We definitely saw, like, okay, maybe they're not the, like, demonic team that no one will be able to touch in North America. Obviously, LG versus them was a very close match. It came down to some heroics to bring it back, but still, Alter Ego, through that winner's side, had made a case for, like, we're kind of it. We're like the team. So very exciting for, I think, the entire region. Maybe not Alter Ego, but very exciting for the region to see some talent rise up and face against them. Hades did make it extremely far. I mean, obviously, they were able to beat Team YouTube, but then they went on to get 2-0'd by both Nemesis and GT. hard to discredit though. Nemesis and GT were into the grand finals. Obviously, they are they are looking unbelievable. Celestial, no, you're not. I do think Hades is definitely a strong team, and you guys were formed for less than a week, right? Another team that
they're
is,
like the
brand
NA
new.
Outer Banks, right?
They
Just
really are. They are
Literally.
exactly
cobbled
the NA
together, and
Banks.
then of just like absolute gamers, and then just delivered, right? So
Exactly.
there's also something to be said. And I know this isn't a perfect recipe for success, but just in these two corner cases that we've seen, I think there's something to be said about forming a team of just people that you know, like, hey, we're all really good at this game. We don't really have a lot of stock of failure because we're not expecting much from ourselves, and you just get to kind of ball out, right? Like you just get to like, like just the F it we ball mentality. And sometimes like some teams can't adjust to that. They can't, like, why are they doing this? It doesn't make sense. But like they know it doesn't make sense, but they're just in that F it we ball mode, and then it's just like finding ways to win, which was cool, right?
Yeah.
And we see Hades do it. We got to see Outer Banks do it, and that just makes for fun teams to watch.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even more credence to that theory or strat, if you want to call it one.
Yeah, I don't think it's a strat.
Sure, but we are in a championship points format, right? Like championship points are awarded per individual. Like, if you don't have the perfect team, this is a general public announcement from the Overdunk point. If you don't have a perfect team that you're playing with, or you're like, oh, I just don't think I could go that far with this team, change next month. Grind it out, play this next month tournament, earn the championship points, and then move along. There is no better bargaining chip than to get you on a team than, hey, my in-game name is Zoinks, and I have this many championship points. Trust me. By the end of the season, those decisions happen a lot. It's not like, I can play Zoroark and Cramorant. It's like, dude, I don't care. Do you got above 200 championship points? Like, yeah? All right. Let's ride, because we have a chance of making it into regionals. You know what I mean? Like, this is these are literally things that happen. So yes, awesome. I want to celebrate teams that form quickly and just want to compete, because maybe you find the perfect team, you keep competing. Maybe you find some new teams, but just compete. That's all I'm asking. Yeah. That's all I'm asking. Bridget, is there any other teams outside of Nemesis and GT that you would wanted to talk about in North America before we start talking about them?
I think that is kind of who I got to see the most of. So I'm aligned to focus on them.
Yeah. I mean, once per episode, shout out to Sneaky Seal. It's not a free shout out. He should be putting exclamation mark factor, but it is his birthday. So happy birthday, Sneaky Seal. Happy birthday. Make sure to show the guy some birthday love. But he was doing the Red Zone stream again. Absolute goat, making sure that all the NA scenes are shown on screen as much as possible. Like a few different observers putting it all up. It was absolutely so so-cool. And Sneaky, I just hope you know that's like not going unnoticed. So seriously, thank you so much for all you're doing for the community. But so yeah, I mean, that VOD should be up for a little bit on Sneaky's channel, so go check it out, go follow Sneaky Seal. Okay, grand finals though was between Nemesis and GT. They did not face each other in top 8. However, it was Nemesis who knocked GT down to losers bracket in the open qualifiers, which was pretty cool. So we had, after GT was able to beat them in the first game of the grand finals, they were at like a fresh even score. Like the most 1-1 they could be. Was so hype. Oh my gosh. Wonder Chef and I were like losing it on the desk, breaking it down with like, the narratives are crazy. But let's talk about GT first. GT, just for podcast listeners who aren't we're looking at the bracket right now. We're able to take down Only Trolls 2-1. They then went on to defeat Team YouTube, who obviously had a last minute change, but we're still able to defeat them 2-0. Took down Alter Ego 2-1. Yeah, some shenanigans happened in the one game, but like Stockings was disconnected for 5 minutes, and yeah, like maybe when they linked it, it was some bad stuff. Either way, GT wins that one 2-1.
It sucks either way.
Exactly. It felt like a wash. Felt like a wash. But then we have GT defeat Hades 2-0. So yeah. And then, of course, we have the grand finals. But who wants to talk about GT first? Deuce next or Bridget?
Brooklyn Bridge, shake it.
I mean, still exciting to see GT have such a like solid run through the losers bracket because it does always like I don't know, at least give me some doubt seeing like a big name or a big team. Obviously, these are all like big teams like starting out in losers. It's just like, man, you guys got a lot to climb. So still kudos for them for playing, you know, what 5, 6 sets of Unite in one day and honestly cleaning up like most of them. So yeah, going into Grands, I was obviously super stoked. Like obviously am an Alter Ego fan as well, but I did think it was cool that like I was like, ooh, it's GG's month, it's GG's month, and then seeing Nemesis up there too, I was like, man, like you guys kind of said earlier, like I was just kind of like rooting for both teams. I don't know, like
Yeah.
I didn't realize how because I was like, oh, we'll have like a new winner for NA. That's so exciting. I didn't realize like almost every region had a new winner, which is literally insane. And really exciting. But yeah, I can't speak too much to like how the drafts and the picks and the everything went because, like I said, I was listening more than watching. But
yeah,
they were still really exciting to listen to and follow along.
Oh yeah, that's sick grand finals. Deuce next. How about you? Let's talk about GT first.
Yeah, I just put it in chat. Lutano is a clutch machine. I think Lutano is a perfect add to that team. I think I was talking to was it I was talking to you and Spraggles maybe about yeah. So you know, I've actually been able to sit in some of GT's VOD reviews. Just you know, obviously not to spoil strategies or anything, but
and
just
this
to
is what they
in.
said! Exclamation mark fact.
But just like listen and learn and like understand, because the better understanding I have of the game, the better a caster I hope it makes me, right? But just to speak to the conversational energy, Lutano is making some definite positive changes to how the team approaches the game. Period. Right. Being just a vocal, you know, like, hey, why are you doing this? And then whatever the answer is, like, that's cool, but it's wrong. So we're not doing that anymore. And you know, and the answer is, you know, kind of, you know, similarly to, yeah, but it works. Yeah, but that doesn't make it right. You know, when you skill gap somebody in something because it's working doesn't make it correct. Right? Like you're finding a success rate because of your personal skill, but not because it's objectively the right thing to be doing. So getting everybody back on the same page, moving in a direction where it makes sense. Lutano literally messaged me, which I thought was super cool, and I don't think they'll mind me sharing this. And I don't want to miss the tribute, so I'm just going to read this. Hey, I was just rewatching the GT versus Hades VOD, and you criticizing gameplay is good stuff. I feel like highlighting some negatives is good for casting overall, gave us something to focus on. But sometimes just calling a turd is a good thing from time to time. I feel like that's been missing from casts, and noticed that on my first watch, and GT appreciates it. And the moment specifically that he is talking about is GT versus Hades. GT was up like big. And then there was like this weird goal zone siege where Spraggles and I just started talking like, what is GT doing? Like they had everything and they just pulled up to get like 1v4'd, like almost like just logs in a wood chipper. Like they were just like throwing themselves in, and it like started changing the texture of the game. And then all of a sudden, you know, Hades was doing a top goal zone siege and they all rolled up late and they all like were scattered and got buckled again. And all of a sudden a game where they were up potentially 200 plus points and like 3 levels apiece across all their characters, all the levels were literally exactly the same. And Spraggles calls it out. He's like, we are at exact level parity across the board, number for number. And that lead that they had was below 100, right? GT ended up winning that game, but it was just one of those things that was like, man, imagine if GT, like how bad they would have smashed if that didn't happen. So like Lutano, I think just taking notes and bringing this to the team is going to work wonders for them. GT has a bunch of phenomenal players. I think they're all stepping into their own right. I think they're all getting much more comfortable competing, which is crazy to say because they had a great run last season, right? They kept progressing on a monthly basis, and they're doing that again in UCS Season 3. They've already topped their performance from February, and they're just always forever scrapping for that number one spot.
Right.
And I can't imagine what a GT being on top for a month, how that's going to translate to their mental and how that momentum is going to carry through. So nothing but positive things to say about GT, nothing but love for that team. And if they were up against literally any other team in the top 8, I think you could make an argument that they would have been kind of everybody's fan favorite. But unfortunately, they're against Nemesis, which I think everybody was pulling for. The amount of people I've seen put in chat that was like, I was rooting so hard for both these teams because I just really, whether it's you like the people or you just love their play style, like there's a lot to enjoy. And of course, they delivered an absolute banger.
Yeah.
And I just talked for like 40 minutes. So I apologize, but just I'm super
so
gassed
good.
up about these teams in this finals.
This grand finals is so good. I'm gonna vote. We gotta vote review this one too. Like, this is absolutely one that, like, I know normally we try to just see every other region. We got to do that, but we also got to re-review EU and NA because NA in particular had some crazy off-the-wall gameplay. But let's talk. Okay, so we talked about GT now. Obviously, the one storyline piece that you mentioned a little bit there, Dupe Snacks, is that they have kind of been the perennial second place. They've got second place twice now in 2 different monthly cups. They're just that first place is just eluding them barely a bit. Obviously, Lutano's been a champion of a few tournaments, so that has shifted a little bit, but we all saw the potential there. A couple things go differently in maybe 1 or maybe 2 of those games, and we're talking about GT finally being the champion, so the potential is obviously there. It's obviously there. 3 monthlies now at second place. Thank you, that guy. 3 monthlies now. Thank you. That guy's my stats guy. He's like, actually, that guy's one of the only people who I know who like knows the tournament history as well as I do at this point. But okay, so now Nemesis is going to be the next team that we got to talk about. Our North American champions. This is the team that I was so gassed up on going into February. I was pulling for this team so hard. Obviously, they did not have the showing they wanted, but this tournament, they cruise through winner's side and make it in. They have to go against Alter Ego first round. Pretty tough seeding, you ask anybody. And they start off the day by 2-0ing them. They rock them 2-0. They 2-0 Hades in that winner's finals. That match seemed like probably one of the closest to a blowout that we had in the winner's side when we were casting, when Chef and I were talking about it. I remember like casting this. I was like, dang, he's got some stuff, but like Nemesis is like, they are Nemesis today. they are swinging. And then, of course, we passed it over and then waited in that grand finals where GT and them just came so incredibly close and back and forth. So exciting. So much fun to see. A lot of cool takes by the team, but I feel like it's kind of impossible to talk about Nemesis without talking about Pokemon selection now. And moving into that part of the podcast, because this grand finals was exciting because of the storylines and the players and everything, but a large part of it is how wild things got out there in the draft screen. So let's find where North America is. Here we go. This is top 10 Pokemon used in the North America March Cup. We have Hoopa and Blastoise and Trevin kind of rounding out our big 3 at 21, 21, and 19 plays. We had Pokemon like Talonflame. I mean, OG's Talonflame was wild out there. 9 games, a 32% pick rate. I mean, those 9 games, all OG basically. I think one game was Lutano one time. They like switched it up or something. Oh no. It was like Lutano took the Dodrio from OG when OG played the Talon. But anyway, I had a 77% win rate. Had the highest win rate out of all the Pokemon on this graphic, which is pretty shocking. The one piece that we have information we don't have here is how many bans we had of Mimikyu. This region did not want to see that Pokemon. Apparently, everyone's got the tech. Apparently, Mimikyu is broken beyond belief. I have not seen it, but apparently it is.
Yeah, I mean, that was just crazy to me, right? It was almost as if, like you said, in EU, it was a character that didn't even exist in the game. And then we step into NA and it's ban, pick, ban, and then of course you saw it like reaching the end. It was clear that the word was out that LGC had like apparently the nastiest Mimikyu on the planet. Like every time GT was banning Mimikyu with no questions asked. Right, like it was no question. Mimikyu was gone.
Right, that was before Buzzwole. We banned Mimikyu before Buzzwole.
Correct. Which was again super exciting, right? You said at the top of the show, all these regions are coming to different conclusions, playing different stuff, and we get to see all this like come together in a couple weeks. It's gonna be awesome.
Oh, so sick.
I'm so sorry to jump in before you can talk about this, Bridget. I have to say, just some of these wild stats for our podcast listeners. Eldegoss in EU was one of the highest pick rate and win rate Pokemon in the game. Eldegoss in NA was at the bottom of the graphic, did make the graphic, but at the bottom, 32% pick rate, 22% win rate. Eldegoss getting farmed out here. Let's look at another one. How about Umbreon? Umbreon, 35% pick rate, 20% win rate. These Pokemon were getting dusted by some of these speedsters. It was wild. Meowscarada did well, but maybe not as well as some thought it was going to do. And by some, I mean me. Meowscarada at a 50% pick rate, saw it play in half the games, and had a 42% win rate. Crustle did very, very well. I think we all know that this is probably the best defender right now in the game. It does awesome, and when there's no Umbreon on the other side, it does even better. Also, its natural counter that hurts it a lot are mages, right? That can just chunk down its HP slowly, ignore its defense, things like that. Well, when there are let me check my notes. Yeah, 3 speedsters in one of the games in the grand finals. Mages become a liability. And all of a sudden, Crustle gets to just run around for free. So, kind of crazy. We are not seeing as many of the crazy amount of speedsters that we saw. Scyther was like a big story of the grand finals. It didn't make the graphic, of course, because that was only there a little bit. Obviously, Cramorant. Oh, Blastoise. Yeah, that's actually a good shout. But Blastoise has that double viability, right? Like we saw it just as much of the top path as we saw Defender Blastoise. But that's also another good talking point because Blastoise, I feel like, kind of had a resurgence back to Defender Blastoise a little bit in this tournament, which was cool. Like it's becoming like very on par of like don't really care if we have it as a defender or if we have it as top laner. Like it's doing fine. It's also because Tree's top lane was doing really well. Well, 47%.
Yeah, but
gosh, so much to talk about. Bridget, please go ahead.
I was really surprised at the Trev top lane. I just didn't really think about it, I guess. But yeah, I felt like in games where people were picking Blastoise and Trev on the same team, it was Blastoise defender and Trev top. Like I was definitely caught off guard by how much I saw Tree without the XP share in the top lane.
Oh yeah, we're stacking instead. Phantoms cruising.
Go for it.
It's interesting. I feel like Tree top has viability for a few options. It just, again, podcast listeners, I know you can't see what's on the screen. Tree was picked 67.9% of games, 19 in total in the top 8. So I picked a lot of games. Only had a 47% win rate. Feel like if it went into some pretty nasty top lanes, it was tough to deal with. But it is a Pokemon, if you're playing into the top lane, that has decent survivability into early ganks. You know what I'm like? I feel like you're okay. You have the Trevenant passive. Even if you're running it top lane, you're probably still running Focus Band, which is very good for Trevenant. So like, I don't know. It's got some options. Yeah, that's right. Celestial did run Slowbro top a little wild. I feel like that was it's great into Buzzwole. I don't know if it had the same viability as we wanted it to in the last game, but Tacker Slowbro top can work. But yeah, we should call that comp Apple Juice because it's treetop. Feels like a stretch, but I'll take it, Motor Bridget, any Pokemon selections that you wanted to talk about out of this list?
I guess it's just interesting to me, like, Hoopa and Blissey being the top supports picked in NA, which makes sense to me. Obviously, Hoopa is so unique. The portals are always clutch, going back and forth, and Blissey is kind of like a good natural counter with the Egg Bomb into the portals, but it makes me I guess EU just likes LD because they are LD gods apparently, but I'm just like, I need to watch like that LD Hoopa matchup more because I'm not understanding why they love LD so much. But I guess it is like comparable. Like they're both like A pressy supports. But
they're A pressy.
interesting
They
to me.
both LD has better. Well, does LD have better anti dive? Kind of. Your spore's better. Yeah, I would say you'd have to run like Shadow Ball to have like better anti dive with Hoopa, right? So, yeah,
Probably.
I don't know. I honestly, there's a lot of things proven in this metagame right now. I think Crustle being proven the best defender is there. Oh, or Blastoise. Okay, maybe not. Maybe not proven, actually. I take it back. Glaceon is still good. I will hang my hat on that one. 13 picks, 46% win pick rate, 61% win rate. Leafeon is still cracked. People were leaving Leafeon up in NA. That was the one. I feel like they banned Buzzwole more than Leafeon. Am I off base here, Dupes next?
No, Buzzwole was banned every single time. Leafeon was not.
Yes. Okay, that's the one that was let through. Yeah. It was Leafeon that NA was like, play it. Who cares?
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, and Trainer was on Aerial Ace Razor Leaf the whole time, and it looks sick.
That's so
sick. I was smurfing with that too. So here's my just going to the Blissey Hoopa like theory over Eldegoss and NA.
Okay,
we saw way more speedster heavy comps, and Eldegoss, although it has Cotton Spore, it cannot actually sustain anyone on your team outside of that. Whereas Hoopa, with good communication and strategy, you can actually save some of your speedsters or squish your Pokemon from getting dove on. You also, with Hoopa specifically, with that communication factor, because you're also playing a lot of speedsters, have the mobility to get to the portal and disengage. And I think just naturally it fits better in that. And then Blissey, on the other hand, of course, still has the single target heals, but also has the disrupting factor for when those speedster type characters engage, right, with the egg bomb. But also Bliss Assistance is an offensive weapon in that regards. And Eldegoss just doesn't check any of those boxes, literally, from either character. Whereas EU was playing way less speedster based type stuff. It felt like maybe I feel like I'm not wrong on that.
No, you're not. You're not.
I mean, you literally casted the game,
right? But I just don't want to be misremembering because then that kind of shatters my whole theory. But they were still playing a lot of Cotton Spore, even if there was one speedster on the other side. So
yeah, Dodrio was like kind of the only one, right? That did really well in EU.
They were banning Leafeon.
Yeah, every single time. So I think that's just that's my quick hit theory as to why Eldegoss was so prevalent in EU and successful versus why it really couldn't hold a match in NA. Because as these games went further on into the day, you were seeing more double speedster comps, triple speedster comps, or whatever. And you need your supports to just be able to do more. And Eldegoss is it's cookie cutter. Like, it's predictable. It has what it can do. And it doesn't have massive saves like a Hoopa can do. It doesn't have a massive Unite that can help your hyper carry push through like Blissey does. So I think it just falls short on those swingier, more high octane plays.
I agree. Also, I see Sonics in chat saying that feel like bans should be included in this graph. That would be awesome. I know Poker has talked about really wanting to do that. Unfortunately, Unite API does not track what Pokemon were banned in a game. And that's how they're tracking all the info. It's just taking each game by game via Unite API, because a lot of them aren't on broadcast. And so they're only able to get as much information as they can find, unfortunately. But it would be really cool. We could do like on broadcast ones, but that feels a little bit shy. But yeah. Interesting stuff from NA. I feel like before we close though, we have it. I kind of want to talk about it. We also have the stats for Brazil. So obviously we haven't watched these ones yet, but I do feel like it's worth pulling up. Some interesting stuff here. They're on the Crustle train in Brazil. Crustle played in 20 games. Eldegoss played in 20 games. So EU and Brazil both believing in the LD. 83% pick rate for both of them. Obviously they were played the same amount of games. However, this region has always done it, and it's been one of my favorites for Brazil. They love that Chandelure. Chandelure picked 62% of games, only a 46% win rate, but like, Come on. A lot of Decidueye, too. Interesting. A lot of Decidueye. All right. Well, this is terrible to listen for our podcast, but if you're watching on YouTube or watching on live, you can take in this information with us. But obviously, we don't know too much about this region yet. But if you're watching live on Twitch, we will be VOD reviewing the Brazil Grand Finals right after this. But all that to say, is there any numbers on this page that really jump out to either two of you? Remember to say them out loud because of podcast. But
Can you show us them?
yeah, for sure. I got you. I realize now why the two of you weren't talking while I was just sitting there looking at the list.
50%, 75% win rate on Sylveon seems banana lands. That seems like an outlier. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah, Sylveon climbing the ranks. Another region that played a lot of Espeon. 54% pick rate on Espeon. Not as much as EU, but also not as high of a win rate as EU. Only 46% on the Espeon. This is another region that Mimikyu was everywhere, or at least in the banning phase. But I did see on the winning graphic, it was on there. So I guess it made it through for the winning match, which is exciting. But
Is Brazil the region you said didn't know how to play Buzzwole previously?
Well, they certainly don't have the win rate.
I don't know.
I don't know if I said that exactly. I don't know if you're putting words in my mouth. But
okay.
You are correct. They did have it played only 6 games, 25% of the time, but only had a 22% win rate.
That is
They got the counter. They got the hard counter. I don't know where it is. We're gonna have to watch it, but 22% win rate on Buzzwole is whack.
That is a tragedy. We saw it in one game this weekend, and it was the nastiest thing moving.
Yeah.
Untouchable.
They had Umbreon on the other side too, and it was like, I don't care.
Crazy. It was crazy, and it was the biggest, harshest lessons learned I've ever seen on broadcast for like a draft lesson. Like, oh shit, okay, guess we can't let that through. And I feel like it was a lesson that was so felt that it rippled to every other team that was still playing in the event. They're all like, oh no, absolutely not, and then trickled to NA. It was banana lands.
Oh my word. All right. Well, there's our thoughts on Brazil as well. Unfortunately, we haven't watched that yet, but like I said, make sure to tune in. But yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of coming to the end of the episode. Is there anything else that the two of you wanted to talk about before we close up shop? Obviously, there's a lot about March Cup, but that is sort of what's front and center. The game, we had that balance patch. It didn't affect too much in between, but we talked about that all on last episode as well. So we were able to discuss that last podcast episode. Looking towards Phalanx in, I don't know, a month. Very long wait time for that amazing Pokemon. Bit of a bummer. I feel like I hit the spark notes. Bridget, any thoughts before we end this episode?
I honestly can't wait for UIC. You guys said it was in like 2 weeks.
I think 3 weeks technically.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like, whoa, 2 weeks? Oh my gosh! But no, I'm especially coming out of our first. Was this our first taste of double bans
in Unite Championship Series tournaments? Yeah.
Yeah, was really fun. I definitely feel like it made it a lot more exciting, and I do feel like we got to see a lot more unique picks, like even in our grand finals and stuff. Like, yeah, if you would have told me Cram was winning NA, I would not have believed you. So it just makes me even more excited to see an international stage with this kind of format. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, me too. All right, how about you, Dupe Snacks?
EUIC is going to be dope. Can't wait. The fact that these teams don't have that much video, like that much VODs on each other, is going to make it even more fun. It's going to be a lot of learning on the fly, which is very cool. Follow at Big Bridget on Twitter. And lastly, if you do hang around, we'll be talking about this a little bit more. Check out our factor link. You can actually click it, I believe, on the actual stream page, if I'm not crazy on the overlay. But check that out. 50% off your first order. You get a couple other things thrown in there as well. we've kind of stayed away from sponsorships, but this is one that Zoinks and I were both pretty happy to take a look at because it's something that did interest us. I haven't had the product. We've all ordered boxes. We'll be getting that. We'll actually be talking about it on stream as part of this, in our honest review here. But please check it out if it's something that interests you. Consider going for it, and flat out the money is going to go into the coffers so we can run another Unite Mike's Mayhem.
Yep,
that's what it's going to go for. It's not going to be part of the emote initiative. It's literally going to be, we are doing this so we can fund another Unite Mike's Mayhem, or at least help that along. So just do us a favor, check it out. And that's all I've got. Did I say follow at Big Bridget on Twitter?
You did. You did.
Yeah, you did.
You got the social shoutouts for that. Of course, make sure to follow Unite Mics on Twitter. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube as well. If you are watching this episode on YouTube, I'd love to see some comments on these videos as well. If you want to participate in the conversation of the podcast, I'd love to hear what Pokemon that you want to see compete at a top level at a Unite Championship Series tournament. We got to see a lot over this weekend, but I want to see what you're still holding up hope for. Maybe one day the Greedent will make a return. Who knows? So yeah, make sure to comment that below. And yeah, for everybody in the live stream, remember, stick around. We're not going to be ending stream. We're going to be taking a look at Brazil in just a few minutes, so don't go anywhere. We're going to go to a very short Be Back Soon screen, but we'll see you all next week when we have another episode of your favorite competitive Pokemon Unite podcast, Overdunk. See you soon.